listening to the Cricket Podcast.
I think it was a disgraceful performance, and I think it should never be permitted to happen again.
That is very good.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we will be recapping Day 5 of the World Test Championship Final between New Zealand and India. Well, I sort of say Day 5, boys, don't I? But it's actually the end of Day 2.5. We're going into Day 6 tomorrow. Who knows what will happen? Today we'll be talking about Williamson's marathon innings. We'll be talking about Mohammad Shami's heroic efforts for India to drag them back into the match. And then we'll be talking about what we think might happen tomorrow. I'm Jack Hope. This is the Cricket Podcast. We've got Ross Legg over there. How are you doing, Ross Legg?
Good, thanks, mate. An engrossing day of Test match cricket. I never thought I'd be so in love with the game we were scoring pretty much the whole time, less than 2 runs and over.
And we're joined by Max Rowe Brown. How are you doing, Max Rowe Brown?
Oh, yeah, very good, thank you. What an absorbing day. That's the word you use, isn't it? When it goes really, really slowly. Absorbing cricket.
Yeah. You know what? I think 80% of today was really, really, really high quality. And then it sort of maybe tailed off a little bit towards the end. There's plenty for us to talk about. England football team play in 47 minutes' time, so we can't go on for too long. We need to sit down, get our snacks ready, put the TV on, get our feet up and stuff. So Ross, really quickly, can you run through the messages for our listeners?
Yes, follow us at the Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel in this video. And we're also sponsored by Woodstock Cricket, who, if you need a cricket bat, go and buy a cricket bat from them. They are brilliant.
They are brilliant. And you can head over to Patreon, patreon.com/thecricketpod, if you would like to support us directly. We're still on 12. We busted through the 10 run mark, and then we've got stuck on 12 for a little bit. So help us get up to unlucky number 13. Be the next Patreon, and support the show. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll be covering all the really exciting England v Sri Lanka cricket coming up, and then we'll be on to the good stuff again with India v England across the rest of the summer. Max, you do a thing for us called the Mac Summary.
Yes.
Which is like a cheeseburger cricket thing that we've got going on. Can you give us the Mac summary of Day 5, which was also Day 3 of the World Test Championship Final, please?
I certainly can. New Zealand started Day 3/5/4/ don't know. About 100 runs, just over 100 runs behind India, and 2 wickets down, and they were looking to kick on for a big score to give them a sniff of a win. But the conditions were quite, and the Indian Pacers started to kick up a bit of a storm. But obviously New Zealand have got captain Steady the Ship. So he successfully managed to avoid steering the New Zealand boat into some very pointy rocks, but made little actual progress. Blown a few holes in their hull, and by lunch the New Zealand batsmen were stuck in a strong headwind, and the boat was taking on water. But there was a welcome change of impetus at one end after lunch, first from de Grandhomme, then the bowlers, and they got that ship inching towards India's first innings score, while Steady the Ship bailed out water at the other end to frustrate Kohli and co. Eventually he fell after a long vigil, but some lusty blows from the cannons of Southey and Jameson had dragged the New Zealand team to a lead of 32 by the time that they were routed, which was looked like it could be useful. And that took us into a pretty vital final session in the context of whether we might actually get a result in this game. New Zealand's pacers were hoping for a quick 1-2-3, but despite snagging Shubman Gill, Rohit Sharma and Pujara looked pretty immovable at one end. And that was until Rohit Sharma reminded us of the adage that there are 2 types of leave. He fell. Fortunately, what India did then was send in their best batsman to see them through to the close and not a night watchman. So, and that worked quite well because Kohli saw them through, and we ended the day with India, 61 for 2, was it?
Yeah, headed 1 for 4 as well,
64
didn't he?
for 2. Yeah, headed 1 for 4, yeah.
Right, that was a good summary, Max. That was a good summary of a good day's cricket. Ross, I'm going to throw it over to you next. Where would you like to start in today's discussion?
I think there's only one place to start, and that is Mohammed Shami, I think. Purely on the fact that we were talking yesterday or the day before, whenever the day wasn't rained off, about how a lot of people were saying Siraj should be in this team. I think today Shami produced what Shami can produce. Like sometimes he bowls a little bit hot and cold. People say he gets a little bit unlucky. But on Twitter, people say he's the most unlucky cricketer of all time. Don't really buy into that mantra. But today he was on song, and he's the one who's single-handedly given them even 1% of chance of actually clawing something out of this game, I think.
All right, so let's dig a little deeper into that then, Ross. What was so impressive about Mohammed Shami to you?
Well, I think based upon what we've seen, all of the conditions have suited kind of the pace bowlers, and in New Zealand's lineup is obviously 5 pace bowlers or 4 pace bowlers, and the grandad kind of stump to stump stuff that Colin provides. And New Zealand, I thought, found the right way to bowl. India here had to find that as well, and Shami was the one who did it. He kind of led the way. Sharma was there as well. Bumrah not been great this Test match, if we're perfectly honest, but Shami has been the one who stood up and found swing and also bowled the right line of length, and that took kind of the key wickets and kind of what gutted the middle order. Really, I mean, you got Ross Taylor out, got Watling out, to Grandom out, and Jameson. And that is a good afternoon's work right there.
It's not too bad, is it? They brought him back for 1 over as well, I think, to try and get to try and get Bolt. And Bolt, he must have played like an improvised shot to every ball that over and somehow managed to survive it. I think he scored 6 or 7 runs off it as well. Max, I saw you nodding along for our podcast, so you don't get the privilege of seeing Max, a.k.a. Ed Sheeran, nodding along. But he was nodding along to some of those comments Ross was making about Mohammed Shami. Did you have anything to add, or are you just admiring Ross's analysis?
Perfect analysis, Ross. Well done. No, I think the thing about the way Mohammed Shami bowled today was sort of the thing that highlighted how good it was sort of if you contrast it with India's other two steamers today. And so you had Bumrah and Sharma started the day off with the ball, and they were sort of, I mean, you could argue that they were kind of bowling an aesthetically pleasing line and length in that, you know, it wasn't challenging the off stump, so and it was a little bit back of a length, so you know there weren't any balls that were going to bowl anyone. You weren't attacking the wicket so much, which meant that New Zealand, in the way they were playing, were able to just leave everything, and that's you could say that they should have been a bit more attacking, but actually that kind of worked out quite well for India, because the obvious plan, I think, with New Zealand was to go out, leave anything wide, take the bad balls, and try and maybe tire the bowlers out in the knowledge that they only have 3 seamers and that perhaps they could make some hay a bit later on. But as it happened, there weren't really any bad balls. They just sort of Sharma and Bumrah just bowled a little bit too short, perhaps, and a little bit too wide outside off stump, which meant that the New Zealand batsmen just left everything. But that built loads of pressure, and then Shami came on and absolutely made the most of that by attacking the stumps, and it sort of basically worked as a trio of the bowlers, I think. And I think that's what was so impressive from my point of view for Shami, is that he came on and just basically took the platform that New Zealand, India's bowlers had sort of made in terms of the pressure, and reaped the rewards.
So I think there are a couple of things that I'd say about that. One, I don't think India did necessarily bowl too short. I don't know, there was a stat going round, and it showed that the run rate if you bowled full was about 3.5 and over, if you bowled short was about 3.5 and over, and if you bowled a good length was 1 and over. So the attritional nature of today demonstrates really there how disciplined India were all day, and it's the same for New Zealand. That's across the whole match. It shows really the quality of the bowling in this Test match. And the second thing I'd sort of say on that full length v good length debate is that if you bowl a full length, you are more likely to get a wicket with each individual ball, which is to say that your strike rate will be higher, but your average will be higher as well, which is to say that you will concede more runs. So it is a much riskier strategy. In my opinion, India did the right thing in the morning to bowl length basically, and to see whether New Zealand would try and push the scoring. As it was, Williamson and Taylor for a large part of that morning were kind of equal to the challenge. They decided, look, we're not going to get out to your plan. We're gonna make you change your plan. And I thought, and this is maybe counter to what you said, I thought when India mixed their lengths up with the second new ball, they actually bowled worse. And I know they wrapped up the New Zealand innings quicker, but they were going at 5.5 and over, and quite quickly New Zealand went from 60, 70 behind, 6-7 wickets down, to parity. And Tim Southey's hitting sixes. So I if I was going to assess the day from an India point of view, I thought they were very, very good in the morning. I thought they were a little bit unlucky, maybe. On the flip side of that, maybe they weren't unlucky. Maybe they just came up against a brilliant batter in Kane Williamson, having a great day. And I thought I don't know if I liked their plan to then go fuller later on. Obviously,
I think there's a few things to unpack in that. I mean, firstly, what I would say is I was most impressed with Shami in his spell before lunch, and I think that chimes with what you're saying there, in that he stepped up from the plan that you're saying India had there, and sort of attacked the stumps a bit more, and he took they took a couple before lunch. I think it was just Shami took one of them, and the wickets that came later on were slightly different to that. But that was where they sort of broke the game a bit in terms of the pressure they put on New Zealand's batting lineup. And I think after lunch there were a couple of things that to point out. I mean, New Zealand's batsmen, there was definitely a change of impetus there, and that anything that was full, they went for it. Like de Grandhomme, the first ball after lunch came out and played a drive, and that's partly India bowling a bit fuller, but also partly I think New Zealand definitely changed their tack and look, we've tried to grind it out, we've lost a couple of wickets and we've gone nowhere, so we have to attack a bit more, which does then necessarily kind of throw the Indian bowlers off their lengths a bit.
Sure, I do agree that New Zealand were a bit more attacking, but I do think as well, the discipline of the Indian bowling before lunch was the main reason New Zealand found it so hard.
Yeah, but there's also
Ross Taylor and Kane Williamson aren't guys who don't know how to rotate the strike.
No,
they've made careers out of it. Kane Williamson's so good at rotating the strike that he's actually quite a good T20 batter just because of that ability, which is quite rare. There's only about 3 or 4 guys in the world that can score so regularly or so many different types of delivery that you can bat that well in T20. And I think it was. I just don't think there was much there for them. I thought it was really well bowled by India.
The other thing there as well is taking the new ball. That made a difference.
I think that's
the
true.
New ball being harder, and that made it a lot easier for New Zealand to rotate the strike than before lunch.
And I think actually, just one final point on this, then we need to talk about New Zealand's batting, I think, because this is the whole other part of this story, isn't it? I think that India pushed it a little full with the new ball. I think they were like, okay, right, now we've done what we wanted to do. We've got through to the new ball. Now's the time to be really aggressive. And look, maybe it was worth a gamble, because you're not, if you really want to speed the game up and win it, then you kind of did have to do that.
Which is what they had to do if they wanted to win.
And maybe that is what they were trying to do. But it did mean that Williamson suddenly found a bit of fluency. It meant that de Grandhomme looked all right when he was in. It meant that Jameson could do that weird thing where he hit 5 twos in an over. And then Southey could tee off. Should we talk about the batting from a New Zealand point of view, Ross?
Yeah, I think so. I think when it comes to Kane Williamson's innings, that was a vigil at the crease, wasn't it? Really, that was something where, and I completely agree with you, Jack, that it was hard to hit runs. You look at Virat Kohli in the first innings, he hit 40 odd off of 130 deliveries. Kane Williamson really quite similar today. That it wasn't an easy pitch because the bowling quality has been so high and the conditions have favoured them. But what I thought was good in here is that they did have that change of impetus, Max. I think you're right in saying they needed to come and do that. If they would have tried to keep in there is no way Jameson, Southey, etc. survive trying to survive, if that makes sense. They had to kind of try to go for those runs in my head. And I think they would have ended up falling quite short. The fact that they ended up 50 runs ahead, that was a massive boost to New Zealand. That was huge in the context of the game.
Yeah, well, it was 32, but it kind of felt like 50, didn't it, with the way the game had gone.
Yeah, I thought the lower order did their job. We said on the preview show that this game is going to be won or lost in the kind of India 7, 8, and 9. Actually, the New Zealand guys did some of the business there for them. But what can't be underappreciated is that 177 ball 49, and then he threw it away.
I mean, to some extent, I think it's very difficult. One, he could have been given out. I don't know if anyone wants to talk about that LBW, but it was a double umpire's call. It was pretty close.
It was tight, yeah.
It probably.
There was
the
de Grandon. Was it de Grandon? Shortly before that was sort of similarly tight.
Very similar to that.
You got one. You didn't get one.
It was probably slightly more marginal than the de Grandon one. So maybe if you were, 1-1, let's call it 1-1. It was his. If he'd made it to 50, it would have been his slowest 50 ever. The only thing I would say, and look, I know I was just sort of defending the Indian bowlers, but maybe to play devil's advocate a little bit. Could Williamson and Taylor and Henry Nicholls, he was in for 25 balls, only scored 7 runs. Could they have done anything before lunch to speed the game up at all, or were they trying to execute a game plan and screw the world if you think we should be doing something different?
Well, I think it's both, isn't it? They could have tried to speed the game up, but they didn't, because they went with the game plan of we're going to see this out to start with. And I think ultimately, because of the way the lower order played, and they managed to make the most of how it went towards the end of that New Zealand innings, that worked. But we could equally be sitting here saying, oh, Kane Williamson's not been aggressive enough, and it's cost New Zealand a shot at a lead in the first innings. But they had a plan. I think they had a plan. It looks like they had a plan, and it seems to have worked out for them in the way it went. But yeah, I think it's they could have maybe been a bit more pushed it a bit more before lunch, and they didn't. But
yeah, no, I tend to think, like, watching it, I was doing some commentary for Guerrilla Cricket much earlier in the day, and I was commentating with a guy who thought that New Zealand were basically missing out on some opportunities to score runs down the leg side. I tend to think that in situations where players as good as Kane Williamson are doing something a little bit odd, like scoring really, really slowly for an extended period of time, I think he scored 3 runs before lunch or 7 runs before lunch, I tend to think that there's probably something that they
something
know
else going on
that we don't know. It's a bit like Joe. Do you remember Joe Root not declaring in the first test in India in Chennai, and people were saying Shane Warne was up in arms, and Root was saying, "Mate, I batted on that for longer than anyone has batted on that, and I know that we could have bowled them out in 3.5 sessions." And he was right. But England bowled India out in 2.5 sessions. Then obviously it all went wrong after that, just for balance. But watching that from a position removed, even ex-pros were saying this is weird. But Root after the game was like, nah, like I was there. Like, if anyone can tell you about this, it's me. And so I thought it was a situation like that.
I did find interesting about Williamson, I've never seen him look that fidgety at the crease before. He was taking on some, but he was taking on some like Marnus Labuschagne antics. There was the little bat flip, the leaves, like twisting the body for a full leave. It was really weird. He normally looks so composed.
I did notice when Taylor was out, he did like a full kind of, not full splits, but like did a real stretch of his like knees out wide and did the biggest crotch pull up I've ever seen him have to do. That was quite exaggerated. We should mention his elbow. That was a problem, but I do think overall it was a minor masterclass from Williamson. Probably deserved a 50. It's a shame he didn't get one. The final thing I'd like to say on that innings, I don't know how much of the I don't know whether you saw all of the India bowling, but I thought the one area where India let themselves down a little bit was the in-swing. I don't know if you kind of noticed this, but every single one they bowled just drifted into the pads or down the leg side, and
they started too straight, didn't they?
It made their bowling just slightly one-dimensional, and I know it was the length they were bowling was so good that they were getting away with this from the point of view of not scoring runs. But it did mean that there were a few passages of play where it was kind of okay. It was kind of easy-ish for Williamson and others to survive, and I do think had they been able to nail that, then they might have been a little bit more dynamic. And you do see that quite regularly, I think, with teams that come to England. Getting the ball to swing both ways, people struggle with because it does a little bit more one way than the other way, or it doesn't quite do it. You have to bowl.
Or it does it a bit later,
yeah, exactly. So I thought that was maybe something they can improve on if they do get a chance to bowl again? And
I think it was Ishant. It was Ishant in particular, wasn't it, from over the wicket that really struggled with that. Obviously, when he goes around the wicket to the left-hander, he's as good as anyone you've ever seen, and he showed that again today. I think from over the wicket, it looked like it strayed down, but it strayed down enough. It was actually impossible to hit for four because it was in that awkward corridor that's outside your legs, so you can't get your.
It's why leg side wides are a thing in ODI cricket, because if you're good enough to do that, it's literally impossible to. The only place you can hit it is a fine leg, and you can just put a guy there.
We put a leg slip and see what happens.
Fellas, is there anything we've missed from that innings? Because there was a good session after tea. New Zealand bowled out just before tea when Southee finally fell, kicking the ball onto his own stumps after he pumped Jadeja into the stands for an absolutely massive six. Anything you'd like to talk about in that New Zealand batting innings, or should we talk about the post-tea session?
No, I think it just highlights India's problem with getting tail-enders out. We've seen it in the World Test Championship before, just kind of leaking a few runs on that. Is it in the chat?
Someone said that in the chat, yeah.
Oh, have they? Oh, there we go. Me and Rickon are always on the same page. So, Rickon, you're a legend. It's literally in my notes. But saying that those bits we said in the preview that actually in England struggle with getting tail-enders out. New Zealand don't seem to struggle with getting tail-enders out. And New Zealand's batting lineup doesn't have someone averaging 8 batting at 9. And I think that is the difference.
New Zealand's tail, as tails go, is a pretty good tail, isn't it?
It wasn't it? It helped them out today, as Ross said earlier. Just before we flip over, if you're watching on YouTube right now, please hit subscribe, please hit like, please leave a comment, say hello to us in the chat. We'll do some questions in a minute, so if you've got a question, whack it in there. Leave us a super chat if you really love us. Head over to Twitter, @thecricketpod on Twitter. Well, and Instagram as well. And Woodstock Cricket is our sponsor. Where would you like to start, Ross? You've been, I think me and Max had a big ding dong about which length to bowl, so I'll throw this over to you. Where would you like to start with India's batting innings?
Well, I thought Rohit obviously started off quite well again. It just shows he's got that temperament at the start of the innings, which I think is kind of invaluable. Gill, on the other hand, actually reverted back to kind of the style that we saw and got out playing a really stupid shot. Like, if there's going to be one shot you don't want to get out to when you're battling for the game, it's trying to flick one through the leg side and getting pinned LBW when that clearly is the plan to him. And I thought that just kind of showed his inexperience on that part. But Tim Southee was on one. Tim Southee was bowling like Jimmy Anderson was on one. And he kind of facially looks like Jimmy Anderson, which I find a little bit disconcerting. But I thought Tim Southee, the fact that he was pitching up a little bit fuller, contrary to what we were talking about earlier on, pitching it short, I thought was the right decision. They're trying to take wickets. You have to try and do that. And I think it was Freddie Wild talking about on Twitter saying that they have the option, if they want to bring it back a little bit and try and dry up the runs that way. But it was getting better to bat on. The wicket looks like it's getting better to bat on. It's not deteriorating because there's not been that much gameplay on it. And I think at the moment, it puts the game in an interesting situation because there should be 90 overs tomorrow, or at least 80 overs tomorrow. I'm looking for India to do something pretty radical tomorrow morning. I want them to go IPL mode on this.
Send Pant in at 5.
Yeah, I would like to see them try something to try and win this game. There is no point in playing 2 years worth of World Test Championship cricket and then petering out for a draw. You've got the extra day. We don't normally get a 6th day of cricket because of rain anyway. Go for the win. If you lose, go for the win. There is more respect there, I think, than kind of both just petering out. I would go, right, we've got a session and a half to smash a load of runs or whatever it is, and then see what happens.
They don't need 850 grand either, do they? Like India. That's absolute peanuts. New Zealand, it might be their entire budget, but...
Let's talk about what we've seen so far, because it doesn't actually look like India are going for that win. I know they had the new ball to negotiate. They had the evening session in England, which tends to be pretty difficult to bat in. Ross, you make a good point. I think the pitch was easier to play on today, and I think actually, rather counterintuitively, it was actually the easiest at the end of the day when it was sunny and not freezing cold and not cloudy. But they went along at sort of 2 and over. They've lost a couple of wickets. Max, are they on the right game plan? Were they right, basically, to kind of write off this session from the point of view of moving the game along with the hope maybe to have a big morning tomorrow?
I think so. I think tonight was about not losing the game for me, and in fairness, like New Zealand's bowlers kept it reasonably tight. It's not it's not like the Indian players were missing out on too much. I think Rohit started to play a few more shots after the first 10 overs or so, and I think Shubman Gill looked withdrawn. I think he played quite defensively and looked like he was sort of holding himself back. But I think Rohit played pretty much the way he normally plays, and he looked pretty solid. But I can't say that it was the wrong way to go. When you've got that that battery of pacers coming at you, just stay in the game for now, and then maybe tomorrow is where you could try and have a dart and see what happens. But it's a really difficult position for India to be in, because like it all has to go right for them to win it, and it only has to go a little bit wrong for them to blow it.
Yeah,
so, that's the beauty of a final. That's the beauty of a final.
There's 98 overs tomorrow, basically, and I think for India to win, they probably have to bat for like 55 of those. Probably have to get bowled out. Probably have to have someone like Pant score 40 on 40 balls, and then they need to bowl really well. And look, all of those things can happen. It gives them a 5, if you're being really generous, 10% chance of winning. But like you say, Max, it only takes a good half an hour at the beginning of the day, and New Zealand will think they'll win this match, because the 9, 10, 11 of India, not wonderful. You can probably blow them away. I don't think they're going to fancy Neil Wagner. They'll obviously try and stick it out, but none of them are great. And I thought this might be
it's not the kind of tale that's going to go and get you a quick 50 runs either, is it? Shami aside.
Yeah, this might be something that kind of illustrates that. They chose not to send out a night watchman. So Vinay over on Twitter's asked us about that. Why would they not do that? I think part of the reason is because none of the potential night watchmen can bat, and you probably don't want to sacrifice Ashwin because he's decent.
It just got dark. It just started swinging a bit more. I think it was a time for your best batsman.
Yeah, and also it's a dumb thing to do. That statistically is a stupid thing to do, to send in a night watchman. But it's particularly stupid if that night watchman's probably going to get out pretty quickly. So I think that sort of explained that. Does anyone, just before we go on to questions, does anyone want to talk about the Rohit Sharma dismissal? Because it was a little bit curious.
Well, to me, it was the first mistake he'd made, I thought. I thought he played like almost the perfect opening innings. Like, he was seeing it well, watching it well, putting away the bad ball and rotating the strike really well with Pujara. I think it was just good bowling. You're allowed to get out to good bowling, and he just misjudged it. It does happen. I think it was actually it was Max. You said in our WhatsApp chat that it was one of those wickets you get given out because you look a bit stupid. You've done something stupid, and the umpire is punishing you for doing something stupid. And that is such a perfect explanation of what happened there, I thought.
I thought he was pretty unlucky by the standards of umpire's call to be given out.
It was clipping off, but just the whole thing in as one package of looking at it, it just looked out because it looked so ungainly, and it looked bad, and it always looks bad when you leave it and it's going straight. So I think that's what did for him there. But the thing, the two wickets were exactly like that was the plan, wasn't it, from New Zealand? It was bowl the away swinger and then throw in the one that comes in, and on those occasions, they executed it brilliantly. Yeah, I mean, it looked like Shubman Gill's had one with his name on it for about 15 minutes with the in-swingers. There were several that nearly
to the
snuck
first
through.
innings.
Yeah.
He genuinely looked like a different batsman to the first innings. I was quite surprised at that.
I saw that he's been out LBW 4 of his last 6 innings, so he's a bit of a candidate, as they say, and that might be. He averages like 60 in first-class cricket, so I'm sure he'll be able to find a solution to that. But
it's only his 8th test. So
yeah,
give him a chance.
It's not. I don't know if I'd realised I had this problem, the last thing I would want is a 5-match tour of England with James Anderson abroad, because I think it could be quite difficult for him. But he'll back himself to figure that out. And you don't average 60 at any level of cricket unless you're somewhat capable of batting. So
The Victoria Park Cricket League, he'd do rather well, I reckon.
Boys, shall we move on to some questions, or is there anything that you have independently thought of that you would like to talk about?
Well, just coming up in the chat around, and I mean, I'm Kohli's biggest fan, as everybody knows. But this is the bit for Kohli. We're just talking about going for the win. If Kohli is going to have the whole time where he wears the passion on his sleeve, the heart on his sleeve kind of thing, he needs to go for this. He needs to show he's got the cojones to go for a win like this, I think. I don't think they can go to try and battle the draw. Don't think they have the players to actually bat out for the draw unless Pujara and Kohli just bat together. Rahane's probably there as well, but the rest, they're not going to hang about. I think they
might. They did an all right job in Australia, didn't they?
Okay, I generally think they have to go for the win. I think it doesn't fit Kohli's approach to Test cricket if they go for the draw. I think tomorrow should be an absolutely brilliant day of cricket.
Well, before we do questions, then, should we just do our predictions? I was going to do that right at the end of the show, but let's do our predictions now. Ross, do it in percentage terms because you can't, obviously draw is what you would say.
I reckon it's probably. Yeah, I'm going. I'll stick to what I said. I think there's a 30% chance India win this and a 70% chance New Zealand do.
But then what? So no chance of a draw. You're saying 0% of a draw.
You just said take draw out of the equation.
No. What I meant was do it 10% India.
I'll go. Yeah. Well, yeah, fine. Well, even then, work that out. 3%.
I've no idea what you're talking about, Max. Can you give us your thoughts?
The draw is the overwhelming favourite, isn't it? Obviously, I mean, I think New Zealand. I'd probably give New Zealand a 10-15% chance because it just takes one collapse in the morning, and they only have a few runs to knock off potentially at the end. But I think ultimately the draw is the most likely. We'll say 10-15 for New Zealand and India. I mean, we're looking at up to 5 at most.
I would probably go slightly higher for New Zealand. I think they've probably got a 20% chance. I think conditions in England, you never know with the weather. It's supposed to actually be all right tomorrow, which doesn't help the chances of a result. But if it starts off a little bit sticky in the morning, teams get blown away sometimes by good bowling attacks, and New Zealand have got one. So I think they have a chance there. I think by lunchtime we'll know whether there's any chance. And I honestly, I think the only way that India can win is if some kind of reasonably freakish stuff happens from this point. They lose a lot of wickets, and then someone goes mad, and then it gets them up to enough, and then there's 60 overs left or 50 overs left, and Bumrah starts bowling more than 85 miles an hour again. There's a lot of factors involved.
Maybe I'm just too much of a progressive now. Maybe that's when it comes to cricket. I'm kind of sitting here. If I'm Kane Williamson, if I'm Virat Kohli,
I just don't I don't know how you can force the result though, Ross. Is the point?
But I think it's go for it. I think it is going in and treating this like a one-day game. That's what I think they should go and do. There's no point in batting out for a draw. Who the hell, as an elite level athlete, even down Sunday cricket, I hate drawing. I can't imagine being Virat Kohli and Kane Williamson. Kane Williamson's already drawn a final. He doesn't want to draw another one.
Can you imagine losing though?
Yeah, I would rather lose than draw.
Well, I mean that's fine, but you're a
psychopath.
You're not making that decision, and I don't, because you both win the trophy. You don't really lose, do you? You win. If you draw, you win.
Rubbish. Absolutely rubbish.
Right, what questions have we got? We've got one more from Vinay over on Twitter, I think, and that's a question about whether they should. What can they do to make the final more interesting, result oriented? I think the obvious answer to that is, why is there only one reserve day? Why would you not have just put in a second or a third? I mean, I'm not saying now.
As many as you need for 5 days play.
Don't change it at this point because you can't change the game in the middle of the contest. But you could easily have said this is going to be a 400 over match. Doesn't matter how long it's going to take to finish and played. It's not. Yeah, I don't understand that at all. But they've made their decision, so we all have to live with it. And it probably will be a draw thanks to that. Anything else on the chat, Ross?
No, there's just all kinds of different bits around. Should they go for the win, etc. I think we've got 10 minutes left. If there's any big questions, ask them. But I'm not seeing anything that we haven't covered already. We should move on to England versus Sri Lanka.
Cool. Do you want to cover that off pretty quickly then?
Yes, so England are back in action in a very, very important white ball series. The IPL being postponed meant there was space in the calendar to pick some good players, and Sri Lanka have decided to come and tour here, which is great. The World Cup in October time, the T20 World Cup that is a priority for England. They can say it is the Ashes, but the white ball has had the full contingent of players for the majority of time they're playing. You'll be gutted to know, Max, there's no space for James Vince. Right.
When's he going to get his chance?
No, very disappointing. Alex Hales also not there, which is a massive shock to the England fans.
It's nonsense, though, isn't it?
It is mad. It really is. The guy is a run machine in T20. He should be in the side. But the big point is that we can all relax because your favourite player and Surrey boy, Tom Curran, is in the squad.
You're having a laugh. I hadn't seen this.
I'm livid, mate. I'm absolutely livid. Sorry, we're doing well in the Blast.
Do you know what? I've read Ben Jones and the other bloke, Lemon's book, and they talk about him as like the future of bowling because he can bowl a ball that's got topspin on it, basically, which I don't know if you know how science works, but when a fast bowler normally bowls a ball, because they put backspin on it, it goes further than it would normally, about 3 yards further. With topspin, it bounces shorter. And that literally seems to be the only reason you'd pick Tom Curran, that he can do that. It doesn't matter that it's really obvious that he's going to do it, and he's playing against people that can see it's really obvious. It doesn't matter that, every other ball he bowls is cannon fodder. It doesn't matter that his results over and over and over again are terrible at the top level of the game. Gets another go because he can do that. Flick it out of the back of his hands. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I just don't understand it. Like the guy has been found out. We saw it in the IPL. We saw it in the ODIs. But batsmen just sit back and just wait for him to bowl that delivery, and it's just like, right, we'll pick where we smash it for six.
Yeah. We'll have the two-handed fucking forehand shot. Thank you very much.
Exactly. It doesn't matter where if it's in the air, it's going to go for six. And England's, based upon their recent drop history, are going to drop it anyway. But when it comes to that, David Willey is back, which I think is good. They know that Jofra Archer is not up front bowling those deliveries. And England haven't quite worked out their T20 bowling approach, have they, Max? It's kind of Mark Wood tried it, Adil Rashid's bowled in the power play. They've not really figured that out. So I think bringing David Willey back in there and Chris Woakes after a 3-year absence is a good thing.
Absolutely. Chris Woakes showed how valuable he can be in the first couple of games of the IPL when Delhi Capitals were a bit light on their pace bowlers with the South Africans not available, and he was brilliant. And he had some runs down the order as well. So he will be very useful. It's the death bowling that England need to sort out, isn't it? They don't know what they're doing. They'll bowl Tom Curran and he'll get smashed around. Is there space for Matt Parkinson in the squad, Ross?
No.
Or are we still assuming that Adil Rashid will bowl every leg spin ball ever?
Yeah, so there's so England's decision in India to not try anything different showed that we didn't learn anything other than India are quite good at white ball cricket, and I mean that was a complete shock to everyone. There's
Especially
no place.
at home.
There's no place for Matt Parkinson, and I've got what happens if Adil Rashid gets injured written here. Where is the succession planning in Test cricket? They have got James Bracey playing, thinking, "Oh, just in case we need a wicket keeper sooner rather than later."
There's not even a wicket keeper.
We're giving every promising colt a go in the Test team. Like what we do with the white ball team? I know is coming up to it, but you need a bit of backup. Owen Morgan came out and said that Liam Dawson is the replacement for Adil Rashid because he can bowl in the power play, but. It's again England picking a batsman who's a pretty decent spinner.
I can't remember the last time Adil Rashid bowled in the power play.
He did it in. He did it in the.
They did it as a surprise in a couple of the T20s. It was, but that was Max. You are on something because it was at the time. People were like, "Oh, holy shit! They've done something different."
And it was it wasn't as much of a surprise when he bowled Adil Rashid in the final over and lost us that game against Australia. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that went well.
You'll be happy to know Bairstow's been passed here, and a person I used to play cricket with is in the England team. So I had the pleasure of playing twice, I think it was, with George Garton, who's the Sussex left armour. And I don't know if you've seen the picture of his release point, but he is genuinely like the frog in the blender thing actually fits that description. Like, he is horizontal mid-air when he's releasing the ball. It's really quite something, and we'll see if he gets a game. win-wise, I think we'll smash Sri Lanka. There's no player in the Sri Lanka lineup who I'm sitting there going, oh, I'm really scared. Pereira's pretty good. They've not got old Lemon Boy Jack, so you'll be happy. He's he's been like, you're only good in Test cricket in Sri Lanka.
They've dropped him from Test cricket. He doesn't play Test cricket anymore.
He's just going to be rolled out when England come into town. I think that kind of gets to that point. I think it'll be a walk in the park, really. Yeah,
it quite possibly could be. I'm not that enthused by it, so I'm more interested in what happens in the World Test Championship tomorrow. But it does start. It's straight after the World Test Championship. England are in action, aren't they? Mm-hmm. Somewhere else, playing against Sri Lanka. So it's always fun watching England play. They are an exciting cricket team. But I don't know if a home series against Sri Lanka is exactly what I want right now.
Yeah, well, Owen Morgan said that everybody is going to have the opportunity to prove they deserve a World Cup place. And
I tell you what will be really funny though, watching all of the format warriors being really upset that England have got a good white ball team and being like, well, where are all these boys in the 2-match Test series against New Zealand that didn't count and we arranged at the last minute? White ball cricket should never be prioritised, despite the fact that they won the World Cup and they might win the next World Cup and they're quite good at it, and we're terrible at Test cricket, so it kind of makes sense.
It's those same people who go, oh, so what's the best day of your life? Oh, well, I should say it was marrying my wife or when my son was born, but it was England winning the World Cup. That's exactly those kind of people. Anyway, I think there's not too much to it. We will cover those games. England have got a hell of a lot of firepower. Morgan, Ali, Bairstow, Butler, even Sam Curran's in that line. Liam Livingston and Jason Roy. So it should be pretty fun, I think. But yeah, we'll see.
Cool. Right, shall we wrap up? Because we've got England's football team to watch in 7 minutes. A final reminder to the 146 people still watching. Hit like on YouTube. Hit it now. Subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe now. Head over to Spotify, Apple, wherever. Subscribe there. Be a cross-format player. Be like Kane Williamson. Be like Kohli. Master all of the different formats. Head over to Woodstock Cricket and buy yourself a cricket bat. TCP25 will get you a discount code. It will get you a discount. Is a discount code that will get you a discount. At the Cricket Pod on Instagram and Twitter and patreon.com/the Cricket Pod. Help us move from 12 to unlucky number 13. Then we'll be really worried. So next week we'll be saying, help us move off unlucky number 13, won't we?
Yeah. The last thing I want to say is India should go for it. If you're not on my team in here, you don't understand cricket. Get away from me.
All right. Well, with that, there's been a big debate about this.
Ross has spoken.
Lots of people saying go. Human beings saying go Portugal. Nah, don't go Portugal. Don't go Portugal. Thanks very much. This is the Cricket Podcast. We will be back tomorrow. So same time, same place. Maybe earlier if the game finishes earlier.
Oh well, we've got one more comment. We've got one more from Nemat. So any comments on the India versus England women's Test match? Yes, they should have had a fifth day. Is my view on this. I thought there was some brilliant cricket that was actually played, and actually I think the women's team not being treated the same as other team actually cost them. They play one Test match a year, maybe 2 Test matches a year. Why are you playing 4 days? Play 5. Give it the opportunity. Max, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the 4-day thing's a hangover, isn't it, from when it was an amateur sport. So there's absolutely no reason for it not to be 5 days now. And hopefully that sometimes you have to have a bad experience for someone to realise that you should change it. So hopefully that will be the thing that changes things. But Shafali Verma looks like quite a good cricketer, doesn't she? She looks like she's taken to Test cricket like it's T20 and is just going to score hundreds off 50 balls and it'd be ridiculous.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I do think Abhishek thinks that England are playing Portugal, by the way, which is quite funny. Republic. But anyway. Right.
All right. Cool. Goodbye, everyone. See you tomorrow for the recap of our, the greatest India win of all time, or the most humiliating draw of all time, or more Kane Williamson heroics. Who knows?
Yeah.